Baykonur later today. That station population will increase from 7 to 10 with the addition of NASA astronaut Loral O'Hara and her Soyuz crewmates Oleg Kononenko and Nikolai Chub. The crew is all set to begin a flight of just over 3 hours in duration to the International Space Station, with docking scheduled at 1:56 p.m. Central Time this afternoon. The Soyuz will be docking to the Rosviet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. Once the hatches are opened between the newly arrived Soyuz and the station, the new residents will be greeted by Station Commander Sergei Prokopiev of Roscosmos and his Roscosmos crewmates Dmitry Petelin and Konstantin Borisov, along with NASA astronauts Frank Rubio and Jasmine Mugbeli, European Space Agency astronaut Andy Mogensen, and Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Satoshi Furukawa. Mogensen will take over as Expedition 70 commander during a change of command ceremony on September 26th, before Prokopiev, Petelin, and Rubio depart in their Soyuz MS-23 spacecraft the following day, heading for a parachute-assisted landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan. Rubio, Prokopiev, and Petelin are in the home stretch of a mission that will have spanned 371 days, which for Rubio marks the longest single spaceflight by an American astronaut. This past Monday, Rubio broke the former record for the longest single spaceflight by an American, 355 days, previously held by Mark Vande Hei. Loral O'Hara today becomes the first American to launch on a Soyuz spacecraft since Rubio did so in September of 2022. O'Hara's flight on Soyuz mirrors that of Roscosmos cosmonaut Konstantin Borisov, who launched to the station as part of the SpaceX Dragon Crew 7 crew on August 26th, providing a reciprocal crew exchange capability to maintain safe and continuous space station operations. The music that you're hearing is being piped to the crew aboard the Soyuz spacecraft. This is a traditional way of having the crew relax a bit during the final hour or so of their countdown before launch. Back here in Mission Control, the Orbit 2 team of flight controllers is on console at this hour. They are involved in watching over the station's systems, checking everything out, making sure that the station is in the right configuration to accept the Soyuz spacecraft later today, with docking scheduled again at 1:56 p.m. Central Time this afternoon. The two flight directors who are on console today are Chris Dobbins and Ronak Dave. They are joined by spacecraft communicator Jessica Meir, veteran astronaut, no stranger to Soyuz operations, having launched almost 4 years ago to the day on Soyuz MS-15 in September of 2019. Again, you're looking now live again with a view of the Soyuz MS-24 on the launch pad at Байконур. Liftoff scheduled just 53 minutes, 45 seconds from now at 8:44 p.m. Байконур time. That's 10:44 a.m. Central Time this morning. The countdown is proceeding on schedule, with no issues being reported from the engineers at the blockhouse in Байконур. Atop the Soyuz 2.1A booster, strapped into their seats in the descent module of the Soyuz, NASA's Loral O'Hara and Oleg Kononenko, along with Nikolai Chub of Roscosmos. Kononenko, the Soyuz commander, is in the center seat of the descent module, flanked to his left by Chub, serving as board engineer number 1. To Kononenko's right, NASA's Loral O'Hara serving as board engineer number 2. For O'Hara and Chub, this will be their first flight into space. For Kononenko, his 5th flight into space. Kononenko and Chub are embarking today on a 1-year mission aboard the International Space Station. They will return to Earth next September with NASA's Tracy Dyson, who acted as O'Hara's backup during the past several weeks of training down in Байконур, and who is launching next spring on Soyuz MS-25 with Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Novitsky and a Belarus researcher, Marina Vasilevskaya, who will be flying as a spaceflight participant on a so-called taxi flight. O'Hara will land on Soyuz MS-25 with Novitsky and Vasilevskaya. And as a note of interest, Kononenko, who is the chief of Roscosmos' Cosmonaut Corps, currently ranks 6th on the all-time list of most days in space by a human. By the time he completes his mission a year from now, he will have jumped to the top of the list with more than 1,000 days in space.
Number 1 and 2.
Right now, the countdown is inside the 52-minute mark, 51 minutes, 50 seconds and counting, for the launch of the Soyuz MS-24 crew to the International Space Station. With everything proceeding in good shape toward launch, let's take a few moments to learn more about Loral O'Hara and her road to becoming an astronaut.
I've wanted to explore ever since I was a little kid, and I'm not totally sure where that came from. I've just always been really curious and interested in other places. And so from a pretty young age, I just wanted to be an explorer. And I grew up in Houston, so NASA was right down the road. And we got to come to JSC a lot on school field trips. And then also when I was in 2nd grade, we grew some tomato seeds that had flown on Space Shuttle. So we got to do the Tomato Seeds in Space program. Just that early exposure to NASA, I think, focused me on an astronaut as being one way to be an explorer. And that dream kind of persisted all the way through school and college. So I graduated from undergrad and then worked for a year and a half and then went back to grad school for 2 years. And I did all of that in aerospace engineering. And my sister was a geologist at Penn State, also in grad school at the time, and her research was in Iceland, studying the mid-Atlantic ridge and the fault lines that run through Iceland. And that sounded really fun and kind of like what I had dreamed about in exploration. And so I started looking around for different opportunities and found Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. And that's how I moved into ocean science. Woods Hole does kind of the broad suite of earth and ocean science. They do everything from biology, chemistry, geosciences, and then they also have a pretty big engineering department. And so I joined the engineering department. When I started at Woods Hole, I started on an upgrade to the Alvin submersible. So it's the United States' only manned research submersible and the oldest sub in the world that does that kind of work. And at the time, we were doing the first of a 2-part upgrade to the sub to do a lot of different upgrades, but mainly to increase the operating depth of the sub from 4,500 meters to 6,500 meters. But one of the things I was responsible for was the main vehicle frame, the overall kind of skeleton of Alvin that attaches the personnel sphere, like where the people are. So it was this huge 7-foot diameter titanium sphere with all these lugs welded onto it. And the main vehicle frame was also this welded structure. And then these 2 parts showed up to Woods Hole separately. And one day we had to mate them. And so seeing the sphere come down onto the vehicle frame and making sure every bolt went through every lug was a pretty great day. This is the kind of work I want to be doing. It's really hands-on. It's working with a lot of different people from around the world, working on science that helps us understand the planet better. And so I started to think that maybe I would stay there for a while. I went all the way through with the Alvin upgrade. And one of the things that I really was hoping to do was to get to dive in Alvin one time. And I did get to do that on sea trials. It was neat to see the vehicle, in action. And I got to fly it for a little bit, which was really fun. In addition to my work on Alvin, I also did a lot of work with robots. So either remotely operated vehicles that were driven from the ship or autonomous vehicles that had their own brain on board. My work with all of these vehicles were mostly at sea, and we would go out on research cruises that were anywhere from 2 or 3 weeks to a month or 2. So Jason is the name of the vehicle that I did most of my work with, and it's an ROV, so it's a remotely operated vehicle. And we lower it over the side of the ship, and it stays tethered to the ship. So there's a tether that's providing electrical power and communications to the vehicle. And then the pilot sits on board in a control room and drives the vehicle from the control room. We have a pilot, we have an engineer, and a navigator. And so I would sit engineer and navigator in the control room, and then also work as a mechanic on the vehicle and as a data processor. A lot of the work that we did with those vehicles was around hydrothermal vents. And so you would see, they call them black smokers. And so they're kind of like chimneys with black smoke spewing out underwater and just this wealth of animal life that lives around them. And so they were just these really beautiful spots on the seafloor that we got to go visit. Those cruises were sort of like the highlight of my career. And I love the research cruises because I think for the same reason that I really enjoy the work here. And that's just going out on a ship with a relatively small group of people and a pretty focused mission, and having to use, whatever we have out on the ship to solve problems and fix things when they break. And you just kind of develop a really nice team dynamic out there. And the work is really fun and interesting. Most of what we were doing was science aimed at understanding the oceans better. And so the overall mission was really great. And similarly at NASA, our mission is to explore, both to inspire people on Earth to develop new technology and to take humans further and further in the solar system. And so working on things like that that have a worldwide impact and that are ultimately for the greater good, I think is really sort of the overarching thing that draws me to exploration. I'm Loral O'Hara, and I'm a NASA astronaut.
A look at NASA's Loral O'Hara, who in a few hours will take up residency for the next 6 months on the International Space Station. If you're just joining us, you're looking live at Site 31 at the Байконур Cosmodrome in the Central Asian Desert in Kazakhstan, where we are 45 minutes, 14 seconds away from the launch of O'Hara, Oleg Kononenko, and Nikolai Chub to the International Space Station. The crew flew to the Байконур Cosmodrome from their training base at Star City, Russia on August 29th for final pre-launch training and inspections of their Soyuz spacecraft. While that was ongoing, the MS-24 spacecraft was encapsulated into the upper stage of the Soyuz booster in the integration building late last week. After the 3 stages of the Soyuz booster were mated together, the Soyuz rocket began its trek to the launch pad shortly after sunrise on Tuesday, hauled to the pad horizontally on a rail car in a process that took about 30 minutes to complete. Once at the pad, the Soyuz was raised hydraulically to its vertical position for final pre-launch preparations as engineers hooked up electrical and fuel lines to complete the vehicle's testing. And we continue to watch the countdown clocks tick backward for the launch of this next crew to the International Space Station, approaching the T-minus 44-minute mark. Out on Launch Pad 6 at Site 31 at the Байконур Cosmodrome, that you can see there in your view, the Soyuz booster poised for launch, fully fueled with kerosene and liquid oxygen as the propellant. The Soyuz 2.1A is the ticket to ride for crews that launch to the International Space Station from the Байконур Cosmodrome. Let's take a moment to take a closer look at this Soyuz booster.
The Soyuz rocket stands 162 feet tall, weighs about 640,000 pounds, and consists of the Soyuz spacecraft inside a protective shroud at the top and the 3-stage Soyuz 2.1A booster below. The first stage has 4 liquid engines strapped to the side of the core vehicle. Each will burn for 1 minute and 58 seconds before they drop away. The core engine of the first stage also serves as the second stage and continues to burn until 4 minutes and 57 seconds into the flight. The third stage has a single engine that will ignite before the separation of the second stage, helping to push it away safely. It will burn until the 8 minutes and 46 seconds mark of the flight, and at that point the Soyuz spacecraft will separate from the third stage, having arrived at its preliminary orbit.
And again, back live with the view of the launch pad at the Байконур Cosmodrome, the gantry arms that are enveloping the Soyuz booster. They will spread or retract to their position perpendicular to the rocket itself a few minutes from now, as we continue the countdown flawlessly, approaching the T-minus 42-minute mark. Meanwhile, the International Space Station is flying over the southern Pacific Ocean, about to cross the southern coast of South America at an altitude of 262 statute miles, about to begin a southwest to northeasterly track that will carry it across the west coast of Africa a short time from now. No problems being reported as the countdown proceeds smoothly from those engineers at the blockhouse in Байконур. Atop that booster, strapped into their seats in the descent module of the Soyuz, which is the center section of the three-section Soyuz capsule, are NASA's Loral O'Hara and from Roskosmos, Oleg Kononenko and Nikolai Chub. The three sections of the Soyuz spacecraft are familiar to those who have watched previous missions to the International Space Station. Here's a look at this workhorse Russian vehicle.
The whole Soyuz spacecraft is 24.5 feet long with an overall volume of 301 cubic feet and comprised of 3 modules. The descent module, situated in the middle of the Soyuz vehicle, contains customized seats for the crew members during launch, entry, and landing, and contains all the controls and displays necessary for the flight. It also houses life support systems, batteries for the re-entry and landing, and the parachute and soft landing rocket engines that slow the Soyuz just before touchdown as the spacecraft lands in Kazakhstan. There are 8 hydrogen peroxide thrusters located on the module, which are used to control the spacecraft's orientation, or attitude, during the descent until parachute deployment. The descent module also contains a guidance, navigation, and control system used to maneuver the vehicle during the descent phase of the mission. This descent module is 7.3 feet long with a diameter of 7.1 feet and a habitable volume of 124 cubic feet. It is the only portion of the Soyuz that survives the return to Earth. The orbital module at the top is 9.8 feet long. It connects to the descent module via pressurized hatch. This is where the crew has a small amount of room to move around following launch during the flight to the space station. It has a docking mechanism, hatch, and rendezvous antennas located at the front end. The docking mechanism is used to dock with the space station, and the hatch allows entry into the orbiting complex. The rendezvous antennas are used by the automated docking system, which uses radar, to maneuver toward the station for docking. There is also a forward-looking window in the module that the crew can use to take manual measurements of distance and closing speed with a laser rangefinder in the event of failure of the rendezvous radar system. The propulsion module houses the oxygen storage tanks, the main engine, and the attitude control thrusters, avionics, and communication and control equipment. The propulsion portion of this module handles all orbital maneuvers, including those needed for the rendezvous with the space station and the deorbit burn at the end of the spacecraft's mission. Before they are deployed, the 2 solar arrays are folded against the body of the propulsion module, which, along with the orbital module, separates from the descent module after the deorbit burn. The solar panels span almost 35 feet. The entire spacecraft serves not only as a crew transport vehicle to and from the space station, but also as an emergency return vehicle in the unlikely event that the crew needs to leave the station unexpectedly.
And you'll be seeing and hearing a lot more about the Soyuz spacecraft on September 27th, when we are here all night in the deep overnight to provide coverage of the departure of Frank Rubio, Sergei Prokopyev, and Dmitry Petelin from the International Space Station to wrap up their 371-day mission. We're also just a few minutes away from receiving from Байконур a video B-roll feed of all of the crew's activities that led up to their boarding the Soyuz spacecraft a couple of hours ago. We'll be bringing that to you as soon as that feed comes in from Байконур, just a couple of minutes or so from now. The ride to orbit for O'Hara, Kononenko, and Chub will take about 8 minutes and 45 seconds. That's the point at which we'll have third stage shutdown of the Soyuz booster and spacecraft separation, placing the Soyuz in its initial orbital plane. The solar arrays and navigational antennas will deploy right after spacecraft separation, and the chase will be on for the Soyuz to catch up to the International Space Station. Because the orbital mechanics in this launch date were specifically selected for a 2-orbit, 3-hour-plus rendezvous for O'Hara, Kononenko, and Chub, they will begin the automated process for rendezvous maneuvers to raise the altitude of the Soyuz to match that of the International Space Station, and to begin closing the gap between the Soyuz and the station as rapidly as possible. The first rendezvous burn, called a DV-1 burn, or Delta Velocity 1 burn, of about 4.74 meters per second, is scheduled some 39 minutes after launch, about 10 minutes before what is called automated rendezvous operations begin. The Soyuz will rapidly begin to close the gap between itself and the International Space Station, and later this afternoon will arrive in the vicinity of the space station itself, conducting a fly around of the station to precisely align itself with the Rossviet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the complex. After a brief moment or two for station keeping to permit Russian flight controllers to assess the angular alignment of the Soyuz forward docking probe with the Rossviet module, the command will be given to begin final approach. That will be a very slow glacial approach of about 1/10 of a meter per second in its final phase, allowing the Soyuz to dock with the station's Rossviet module at 1:56 p.m. Central Time, 2:56 p.m. Eastern Time. Once the docking is completed and the period of relative motion between the two vehicles at the docking interface has dampened out, the forward docking probe will retract and basically pull the two vehicles flush against one another, the Soyuz and the station, permitting hooks to close to form a hard mate between the Soyuz and the station. Leak checks will be performed on both sides of the docking interface before the hatches are opened later this afternoon, and O'Hara, Kononenko, and Chub will float into the International Space Station to begin their stay on board the complex. And again, we are standing by for the roll of video from this morning's crew activities down in Байконур that began several hours ago. The gantry arms that you see buttressed up against the side of the Soyuz rocket out on Site 31, Launch Pad 6, will begin to spread a short time from now, as the countdown has now reached the 35-minute, 17-second mark. It's a beautiful night down in Байконур, about 68 degrees Fahrenheit, clear skies. You couldn't ask for more, as O'Hara, Kononenko, and Chub, in a spacecraft that carries the call sign of Antares, the MS-24 spacecraft, begins its trip a short time from now, within the next 35 minutes, to the International Space Station. And here is the video of this morning's activities down in Байконур. The traditional day began for the crew members as they were awakened at the Cosmonaut Hotel crew quarters in Байконур. To traditional farewell music, the crew departed the hotel and boarded a bus for their 40-minute ride to the integration and suit-up facility at Building 254 inside the Байконур Cosmodrome.
Good luck, guys. Cosmonauts are still not seated in their spacesuits.
Behind the three prime crew members, the backup crew, NASA's Tracy Dyson and Roskosmos's Alexei Ovchinin.
Good luck. Good luck, guys. We love you. Wave your hands.
Again, you're looking at video that was recorded several hours ago, now being fed to us from Байконур, as the three crew members, O'Hara, Kononenko, and Chub, boarded their bus for their 40-minute ride out
Good luck.
to Building 254, the integration building and suit-up facility inside the Байконур Cosmodrome. After arriving at the integration building, each crew member underwent final medical exams and suited up in their Sokol launch and entry suits. One by one, the crew members moved to a mock-up of a Soyuz spacecraft seat, allowing technicians to conduct pressure checks to ensure that their suits were free of any leaks. All of these procedures were rehearsed several days ago during a series of so-called Soyuz fit checks that the crew underwent during their final pre-launch training activities at the Байконур cosmodrome. But today, it was the real McCoy as the three crew members suited up for launch that is now just 30 minutes and 45 seconds away. Family members and invited guests looked on across a protective pane of glass, maintaining quarantine as the suit-up was completed about 5 hours prior to launch. And one by one, the crew exchanged final remarks with their family members, and lastly with senior NASA and Roskosmos managers who provided a final status on vehicle preparations, all the while expressing good luck to the crew before they departed for the launch pad.
Okay, so I was allowed to say a few words. Yesterday we had 2 launches of our shows. We know that 3 is the magic number, so I'm sure everything will be fine. And from all the troupe, from all the actors of our theater, I would like to wish you so that everything is nominal in your ascent to the orbit, also that hope that the docking will be successful and you will do everything that you are required. And so we will be on the ground here in our creative, artistic weightlessness, and you will be up there in space.
Those
so good
remarks
luck,
coming
guys.
from a Moscow theater group, part of the invited guests for today's launch.
That's all I wanted to say. I hope that you will be able also to see our performance, our play, and I hope everything will be well. Thank you so much.
How do we look at our matching t-shirts? You look great. Pick me out of the crowd right away. Remember that one? You look great. I was going to tell you guys, if you were trying to text me earlier, I left my phone somewhere in the hotel. John will have to go on a treasure hunt. You have acquired all of your belongings at this point.
This is the O'Hara family, accompanied by astronaut Mark Vande Hei, family escort for this trip.
I can only repeat once again, have a good flight in the quiescent space. So I will meet you on the ground, hopefully, when you come back. And good luck, guys.
Kononenko and Chub embarking today on a one-year mission to the International Space Station for Laurel O'Hara's 6 months on the complex.
Ну, я надеюсь, вы хорошо поспали все.
I hope you had a good night's sleep, everyone. Yes, we had a good night's sleep. Guys, it's not a very easy task that you have. Nikolai, it is your first flight that I know, I'm sure that you will do everything flying, and everything will be as it should be. And please send our warmest regards to the crew that is on the station together with our American colleagues.
We're all very proud of you. We know you've worked hard to get to this point. We look forward to seeing how you work on orbit. I wish the capsule was big enough for all of us to go with you. But it's a little small for that, but our hearts will be with you. We'll be watching, and we'll be here when you get back.
Thank you so much. I wish you good flight and good luck, of course.
Николай, Лорал, счастливого пути.
Have a good flight, docking, and also nominal work on the station, and of course, good luck. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
And a final opportunity for the crew to say goodbye to their loved ones before heading out of the integration building toward the launch pad. The crew members now seen leaving the Site 254 integration building. This enabled Kononenko, the Soyuz commander, to report that he and his crewmates were ready to proceed to the launch pad.
Chairman of the Safety Committee, the Soyuz crew is ready for the mission. Goodbye, everyone.
The crew boarded the bus at the 254 integration building at about 7 a.m. Central Time to begin what amounted to about a 1-hour trip out to launch site 31 and their rocket. And there you see the buses arriving at the pad. The crew, Kononenko, Chub, and O'Hara, you'll see in a moment, climbing a few stairs to wave goodbye to well-wishers, and then entering the elevator for the ride to the top of the Soyuz rocket to board their spacecraft, which they've now been aboard for the past several hours. accompanied by their respective senior managers, Kononenko, along with Yuri Borisov, the head of Roskosmos, Chub, and there you see Ken Bowersox of NASA and Joel Montalbano, the ISS program manager. Bowersox, the associate administrator for human spaceflight for NASA, accompanying Loral O'Hara to the stairs. And you see the venting of liquid oxygen from the Soyuz 2.1A booster. The crew now has been aboard the spacecraft for the past several hours. The countdown now inside the T-minus 20-minute mark. We're back now with a live view of the Soyuz MS-24 on the pad at Байконур. Liftoff is scheduled for 10:44 and 35 seconds a.m. Central Time, 8:44 p.m. in Байконур. Strapped into their seats in the descent module of the Soyuz, as we have mentioned frequently during our broadcast, are NASA's Loral O'Hara, along with Oleg Kononenko and Nikolai Chub of Roskosmos. And as mentioned earlier, Kononenko, as Soyuz commander, is in the center seat of the MS-24. Chub is to his left. O'Hara is seated to his right. At the time of launch, the International Space Station will be flying over southwestern Kazakhstan at an altitude of about 262 statute miles. The station will actually pass over the Cosmodrome 23 seconds after Soyuz lifts off and will leapfrog past the Soyuz as Kononenko, Chub, and O'Hara climb to their preliminary orbit. 8 minutes and 45 seconds after launch, the third stage engine of the Soyuz booster will shut down, and the Soyuz will separate from its launch vehicle in its preliminary orbit, deploying its solar arrays and navigate beyond, resulting in docking of the MS-24 spacecraft to the Rassvet module of the International Space Station at 1:56 p.m. Central Time today.
Here I go, let's start again. Here I go, turn the page. When you walk into this restaurant, all strung out of the road, and the beauty eyes upon you.
As you can see, the gantry arms around the Soyuz spacecraft and the booster have spread. The vehicle is now on autonomous power. At the launch site in the Central Asian desert, NASA officials are on hand to watch the beginning of the journey for Loral O'Hara, Oleg Kononenko, and Nikolai Chub. Leading the NASA delegation today is NASA's Associate Administrator for Human Spaceflight, Ken Bowersox, ISS Program Manager Joel Montalbano, Johnson Space Center Deputy Director Steve Kerner, Norm Knight, Johnson's Director of Flight Operations, and the Chief Astronaut for NASA, Joe Acaba. And with them is NASA Public Affairs Officer Leah Cheshire, who filed this report a short time ago.
Hi, Rob. We're here at the launch viewing site at the Байконур Cosmodrome in the Kazakh desert. We are surrounded by miles of sandy soil and brush, with our focus on Soyuz MS-24 perched on pad 31, just about 2 miles away from us. Now, this evening, we're in the low 60-degree Fahrenheit range. That continues to drop, but we're looking up to clear skies for our crew tonight. Now, in contrast, the NASA delegation on the Roskosmos charter received a very windy welcome when we arrived in Байконур on Monday, and we saw a very chilly but by-the-book rocket rollout on Tuesday at 7:30 a.m. local time. And since we've been here, we've also seen many of the residents who call this desert home, including camels, cows, and horses. The crew's rigorous training has led to this moment, and they are ready inside the capsule, with this being the first space flight for Loral O'Hara and Nikolai Chub, and the fifth for Oleg Kononenko. O'Hara's family is here cheering for her maiden voyage, and of course, so are we. Now we're looking forward to liftoff and seeing Soyuz rise on the skyline and light up the night. And with that, I'll send it back to you, Rob.
Thank you, Leah. The countdown is approaching the T-minus 15-minute mark. Everything is in great shape. The vehicle fully fueled. It is on autonomous power at this hour. You're going to be hearing a number of rapid-fire activities over the course of the next few minutes. The 1 minute to command key to start is scheduled at the T-minus 8-minute mark. Preparations will be transitioning to an automated mode, which is equivalent to a ground launch sequencer at the T-minus 7-minute mark. Again, you're hearing music piped up to the crew aboard the Soyuz spacecraft.
And ascent on the right. The formats have been selected. Copy.
It's a little bit difficult to perceive, but buttressed up against the side of the Soyuz 2.1A rocket are two umbilical towers that have provided all of the consumables for the spacecraft throughout the course of the countdown preparations. The first of those two umbilicals will retract at about the T-minus 31-second mark. The second of the two umbilicals you'll see when we get there will retract at about the T-minus 12-second mark or so. That will initiate the engine sequence start. The engines will come up to full thrust, and then there'll be full ignition of the spacecraft's first stage engines, and the hold down posts will be retracted, and the Soyuz rocket will be on its way. Again, it's about an 8-minute 45-second ride to orbit for third stage shutdown and spacecraft separation. The solar arrays and navigational antennas will deploy. The Soyuz will be about 1,145 miles behind the International Space Station and will begin the automated rendezvous sequence just a few minutes after reaching its preliminary orbit, with a delta velocity burn just 39 minutes after launch. That will raise the orbit of the Soyuz and fine-tune its path to the station, initiating those automated rendezvous operations. Because this is a fast-track two-orbit rendezvous for the Soyuz, there won't be as many rendezvous burns required, because the Soyuz will be moving into the exact plane of the station's orbit, the corridor. You can liken it to a car moving on from an exit ramp to a freeway and getting into the right lane to provide the shortest distance between itself and its destination. Again, the launch is precisely timed for the moment when the Earth's rotation will place the Baikonur Cosmodrome in the plane of the orbit of the International Space Station. On board the station itself, the Expedition 69 crew, led by Commander Sergei Prokopiev, the multinational crew that's on board the station, will be eagerly awaiting the arrival of their new crewmates later today, with docking scheduled at 1:56 p.m. Central Time. Assuming everything goes as planned, The hatches are scheduled to be opened around 4:30 p.m. Central Time this afternoon to allow O'Hara, Kononenko, and Chub to enter their home, which for Kononenko and Chub will be about a year's worth of stay on board the station. Loral O'Hara will be spending 6 months on the international outpost. Here in Mission Control in Houston, Flight Director Chris Dobbins polled his team of flight controllers a short time ago. Everything is in readiness for the launch of Soyuz. From a station perspective, you can see Dobbins is in the middle of this trio of flight controllers that you see. To his left is Flight Director Ronak Dave, and to Dobbins' right is veteran astronaut Jessica Meir.
Antares, this is 5-3. Launch minus 5 minutes. Close helmet visors. Copy, closing helmet visors.
The interpreter talking to Soyuz Commander Oleg Kononenko in the descent module of the Soyuz MS-24 spacecraft, as we are now inside 10 minutes until launch.
Inaudible. Copy, KSS is ready. We see Antares 3 on camera 2. Copy.
This is traditional for the technicians at the blockhouse in Байконур to uplink music of their choice to the crew members in the final hour before a countdown. It's basically a method of relaxing the crew members and making them feel at home before they begin their journey into space. For a quick look at the milestones en route to orbit, first stage separation is expected at the 1 minute 58 second mark into the flight, followed at 2 minutes and 34 seconds by the jettisoning of the launch shroud that envelops the Soyuz capsule itself. Second stage shutdown is scheduled at 4 minutes 37 seconds after launch, followed 11 seconds later by second stage separation. The third stage lower skirt jettisoning is at the 4 minute 56 second mark, and third stage shutdown is at 8 minutes 46 seconds. That is the new computation for that, followed just 3 seconds later by third stage separation. Seconds after that, the solar arrays and navigational antennas will begin to be deployed, and the Soyuz spacecraft will begin in earnest its chase to catch up to the International Space Station. T-minus 7 minutes 40 seconds until launch. We're about to have an engineer at the blockhouse in Байконур turn a key that transitions the countdown to an automatic mode, basically a ground launch sequencer for the remainder of the countdown.
Minutes, command algorithms are on board. We'll be broadcasting all the launch sequences to the MCC. Copy. Vehicle is nominal. We are ready to proceed. Copy. Antares, we are seeing you on camera 1. Copy.
Oleg Kononenko, the Soyuz commander, reporting that the vehicle is ready for launch, the crew ready for launch, as we are at the T-minus 6 minute 35 second mark in the countdown. Again, at the time of launch, the International Space Station will be over southwestern Kazakhstan at an altitude of 262 statute miles and will pass directly over the cosmodrome and the launch site 23 seconds after liftoff. Now a view of the crew inside the MS-24. At the top of your screen, Nikolai Chub, board engineer number 1. There's Oleg Kononenko at the bottom of your screen, about to embark on the 5th flight of his career. The countdown has gone by the book. The vehicle was fueled several hours ago. The crew boarded the vehicle at the T-minus 2 hour 45 minute mark and now is poised to lift off just 5 minutes from now.
Есть продувка 30.
Inside 4 minutes until liftoff. We're about a minute or so away from the pressurization of the fuel and oxidizer tanks to optimize fuel flow and provide additional structural rigidity to the launch vehicle out on Pad 6, Site 31 at the Байконур Cosmodrome. We have now hit the T-minus 3.5 minute mark until launch. T-minus 3 minutes and counting. All systems are go. The range is clear at Байконур. The key to drainage has been conducted. This key to drainage enables the valves through which evaporated oxygen escapes from the fuel tanks into the atmosphere are closed, beginning basically a drain back of fuel back into the tanks, and the valves providing liquid oxygen to replenish any lost by a boil off in the final minutes of the countdown.
Tank repress in progress.
Tank pressurization underway.
Есть надув общий, 30-й. Есть надув общий, 70-й. Есть сброс шагов системы измерения, 70-й. Доклады руководителя...
T-minus 2 minutes and counting. The ground propellant feed now has been terminated to the vehicle, the Soyuz on internal power. Coming up on T-minus 1 minute. The first umbilical tower again will retract at the T-minus 35 second mark.
Minute.
Земля, борт.
vehicle on internal power. Copy.
There goes the first umbilical retraction. The second umbilical will retract in just a few seconds to initiate engine start sequence. T-minus 20 seconds.
Пуск. Зажигание.
We have engine sequence start. We have engine ignition.
Second tower separation.
3, 2, 1.
Pumps at flight speed.
And liftoff. O'Hara, Kononenko, and Chub begin a short-duration journey for a long-duration mission on the International Space Station. All vehicle parameters are normal. 23 seconds into the flight. Good roll, pitch, and yaw program. Engine performance on the first stage nominal.
L plus 30 seconds. Flight is nominal.
40 seconds into the flight.
Well,
Structural parameters are normal. Engine parameters reported from the blockhouse in Байконур all to be within limits and normal.
Давление в камерах двигателей в норме.
L, 1 minute 5 seconds into the flight.
Roll pitch yaw nominal.
All the vehicle parameters are normal. Good reports coming in from the blockhouse in Байконур. The vehicle arcing out to the northeast from the Байконур cosmodrome.
Параметры системы управления ракеты-носителя в норме.
90 seconds into the flight.
Двигатели первой и второй ступени работают нормально.
L plus 90 seconds.
Good engine performance being reported.
184608. C off nominal pressure in case of 1500. Copy.
Coming up on first stage shutdown. And we have first stage separation.
Jettison confirmed.
Launch tower jettison reported. Everything in good shape.
First stage separation.
2 minutes, 12 seconds into the flight.
KSO is back to nominal 980. Copy.
The vehicle now operating on its second stage engines. All parameters are normal. Good structural performance by the vehicle.
Двигатель второй ступени работает нормально.
Launch shroud jettison now reported. In this view now from a camera on the upper stage of the Soyuz 2.1A booster.
We confirm jettison of the nose steering.
2 minutes 50 seconds into the flight. A little over 6 minutes of powered flight remaining.
Launch vehicle is nominal. Copy. Soyuz is nominal. Crew is feeling well.
Kononenko reports the crew is feeling well. 3 minutes 15 seconds into the flight. Perfect engine performance reported. Good structural parameters on the vehicle.
L plus 200 seconds. Second stage engine operating nominally.
Second stage engine is functioning by the book. The Soyuz heading for its precise keyhole in space. Flight is normal. Now 4 minutes into the flight, everything going perfectly. O'Hara, Kononenko, and Chub heading for their preliminary orbit and the chase to track down and dock to the International Space Station.
L plus 250 seconds.
4 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight.
Roll are nominal.
Roll pitch, all normal. Engine performance is normal as well.
L plus 270 seconds. Standing by for GK to command. Copy.
Coming up on second stage shutdown. And we have second stage shutdown.
Second stage separation confirmed. Copy.
Second stage separation confirmed. That's the skirt for the third stage you saw being jettisoned. 5 minutes, 15 seconds into the flight. About 3.5 minutes of powered flight remaining. The Soyuz now being propelled on the power of its third stage engine.
Launch vehicle is nominal. Copy. Soyuz is nominal. Crew is feeling well. Copy.
Kononenko continuing to report that the crew is feeling well. Everything normal on board. 5 minutes, 45 seconds into the flight. Good third stage performance.
L plus 350 seconds. Flight is nominal. Copy.
We've just passed the 6-minute mark into the flight. Good reports continuing to come in. Control of the Soyuz spacecraft after it separates from the third stage will transfer to the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow. 6 minutes, 25 seconds into the flight.
Stage 3 engine operating nominally. Copy.
Six minutes, 45 seconds into the flight, 2 minutes of powered flight remaining.
Stabilization is steady. Copy.
Good, stable structural performance by the vehicle.
L plus 430 seconds. Stage 3 engine operating nominally.
7 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight. Nothing but good reports coming in. We're about 1.5 minutes away from third stage shutdown and spacecraft separation.
L plus 460 seconds. Launch vehicle structural parameters are nominal.
7 minutes, 55 seconds into the flight. Everything is going perfectly so far. Less than a minute to go before third stage shutdown and spacecraft separation.
L plus 490 seconds. Stabilization is steady.
8 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight. About 30 seconds of powered flight remaining.
L plus 500 seconds. Flight is nominal.
Right after third stage shutdown and spacecraft separation, we'll be standing by for the deployment of the solar arrays and navigational antennas on the Soyuz.
L plus 520 seconds.
Standing by now for third stage shutdown.
Standing by for GK 3. 530
and we have third stage shutdown and third stage separation.
Engine cutoff confirmed. Separation confirmed. Antares, we're handing you over to MCC Moscow.
And the program has been activated, and the solar arrays and navigational antennas are now confirmed to have been deployed. A perfect ride to orbit for Loral O'Hara, Oleg Kononenko, and Nikolai Chub.
Antares, Moscow.
The Soyuz being inserted into a perfect preliminary orbit as it begins its chase to catch up to and dock to the International Space Station later this afternoon. At the time of third stage shutdown, the Soyuz trailed the station by about 1,145 statute miles.
Execute per page 35. Copy. RTU closed, SP1 and 2 are open, checking STM. Copy. Start AKG compartment check algorithm. Copy. Ready to start. Compartment check algorithm started. Copy. Copy per page 36.
Aboard the Soyuz MS-24, which carries the call sign of Antares, Oleg Kononenko, Nikolai Chub, and Loral O'Hara are beginning systems checks as they prepare for the first of their rendezvous burns, the DV-1 or Delta Velocity 1 burn that is scheduled
Moscow.
About 28 minutes from now.
Measurement 1 at 1855. Pressure in SA 806. Pressure in orbital module 721. Instrumentation compartment 885. Copy. Next measurement in 5 minutes. Copy. OSK started course 2.
This view now from the control panel inside the Soyuz MS-24. Oleg Kononenko reporting that the crew is feeling great following its on-time launch and its uneventful ascent into its preliminary orbit.
Long test started. Copy. Moscow, I am ready to report per page 37 for screen 03, parameters to port 17, 17.1, 18, 16.8, 19, 267, 20, 1.4, 21, 1.4, 22, 331, 23, 336, 24, 17.8, 25, 17.5, 26, 271. Propellant.
The crew on board the Soyuz spacecraft providing systems parameters and systems information to the Russian flight controllers that you see there in this balcony view from a camera inside the Russian Mission Control Center in the town of Korolyov outside of Moscow. Over the course of the next hour or so, the crew will be testing its core's automated rendezvous system. That's the system that will automatically guide the Soyuz through all of the docking parameters and providing the range between itself and the International Space Station and the rate of closure.
Everything is going well. All systems have deployed per the book. No reports on any deviations, so things are going well, and I wish you all the best. Thank you, Vladimir Alexeyevich.
Once again, the Soyuz lifted off on time after a flawless countdown at 10:44 and 35 seconds a.m. Central Time, 11:44 a.m. Eastern Time, 8:44 p.m. at the Байконур Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. All of the ascent events ticked off in perfect shape through the activation of all of the engines. All three stages of the Soyuz performed as advertised, depositing the Soyuz into a perfect preliminary orbit, from which now they will begin the short two-orbit, 3-hour rendezvous to reach the International Space Station and a docking with the Rassvet module of the complex at 1:56 p.m. Central Time this afternoon.
No com.
MCC Moscow ISS on Antares 2. Go ahead. Pressure in the S805 Delta -1 BO. Pressure 821 Delta is -1. Pressure in the assembly compartment 8. 104 Delta -1. We are on stage 4. I cannot currently monitor the attitude. Copy. Antares. We have some information for you. The propellant parameter is not, it says 216 and it's not accurate. We have 816. We confirm it is not quite accurate. Okay, copy.
This is Mission Control Houston. As the Soyuz MS-24 crew, led by Soyuz Commander Oleg Kononenko, who now is in his 5th flight into space, along with his first-time flyer crewmates Nikolai Chub of Roskosmos and NASA's Loral O'Hara, as they continue to check out spacecraft systems in the early minutes of their ride into space, having launched just about 17 minutes ago from the Байконур Cosmodrome. The Soyuz spacecraft is in excellent shape, all of its solar arrays and navigational antennas having been deployed as planned right after third stage shutdown and spacecraft separation. So with that, the beginning of automated rendezvous operations will begin in about 30 minutes or so, a series of rendezvous burns that will carry the Soyuz over the next 2 orbits into the neighborhood of the International Space Station, where it will close the gap slowly but surely, do a fly-around of the station to align itself to the Rassvet module of the International Space Station, and a docking at 1:56 p.m. Central Time this afternoon. For that, we will be back on the air at 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, with rendezvous and docking coverage as the next trio of residents for the International Space Station begins its trek to the complex and arrival at the International Space Station later today. So we'll be back with you in just a few hours for rendezvous and docking. In the meantime, we'll wrap it up for now. This is Mission Control Houston.